Hello and welcome to this episode of the Blockquote show in which I interview Ukrainian founders, and we are talking about everything about the war, about how they cope with what is actually going on, and how we can support Ukraine and its tech ecosystem in their everyday struggle. Thank you so much for joining me, and our guest today is Oleksandr Kosovan, the CEO and founder of MacPaw and Setapp, and a co-founder of the VC firm called SMRK. Oleksandr, thank you so much for joining today, and it's great to have you here.
Hi everyone, very much thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today.
So, as usual, this is a stream in which we are raising funds for the Come Back Alive Foundation, one of the largest Ukrainian foundations working with the Ukrainian military and helping Ukraine in its war that was started in the full-scale invasion and the war that started 8 years ago, but it has culminated in a full-scale invasion by Russia on the 24th of February 2022. So, Oleksandr, you are the co-founder of MacPaw and Setapp. Can you start by talking about what these companies are? Is it actually one company or two companies now, because you have it separately on your LinkedIn?
Yes, it's actually one company, but two different products. So the MacPaw was started about 14 years ago when I was still a student. And MacPaw started from a single product called CleanMyMac.
Mm-hmm.
This was the product that I created a long time ago, and that is still the biggest product of our company. But since the very beginning, we created many other products, including Setapp. And Setapp, this is a very ambitious project for us. It's like a subscription-based app store for the Mac ecosystem. And basically with Setapp, we are competing with Apple and many other ways people are receiving access to software.
So far, I don't think a lot of companies trying to compete with Apple in its own ecosystem have succeeded. Aren't you afraid that at some point Apple would do something to basically outlaw an app like Setapp in their ecosystem altogether?
Yeah, this is a continuous risk, but since the Apple or macOS ecosystem is very open, there are a lot of opportunities to do projects like Setapp here, and sometimes we can do things even better than Apple because we are very focused on what we do compared to Apple.
Right. So back to MacPaw as a whole, and CleanMyMac as the first product. You basically wrote the first version yourself. Am I right?
Yes, it was back when I was a student. I had a lot of spare time and was very dedicated to the projects. It took me more than a year to write the code for CleanMyMac and to launch the company.
So, and back in the day, I guess the whole VC ecosystem was not really all that developed, especially in Ukraine. So you did not raise external funding, but you decided to bootstrap the company. Do you think that if you were starting doing something like this now, would you go to a VC or would you still bootstrap?
It's a completely different times now. Back in 2008, when I started the company, it was the beginning of the crisis of 2008, 2009, and there was a lack of information about the startup ecosystem, about VCs, how all of this business is working. But right now there is many VCs in our country as well. We are a small VC fund in Ukraine, and we invest in local companies. Unfortunately, the cost of running a company increased significantly since 2008. So it's almost impossible to start a company without the external funding now.
But your decision to bootstrap back then, I think it sort of has paid off, because right now you still have more than half of the stake in the company.
Well, I still have the majority in the
Mm-hmm.
company. We have employees who partially all own the company, but I'm still the majority shareholder. So back then, I didn't have enough experience, and that is why I was doing things I didn't know was possible, and this is how it all happened back then.
Right.
Right now, definitely it would be different.
So as your in your when you put on your VC hat, are you looking for people similar to yourself 14 years ago to invest in?
Yeah, sure. First of all, when we look for startups, we are looking for the team that are really like inspired with the idea and that are willing to create like the best product they are thinking about. So this is the major and the most important component of a successful startup. And only then goes like the product, the existing prototypes or whatever they have on the moment they decide to raise capital.
Yeah. So, but your main job, your main focus is still MacPaw and the products, right?
Yeah, so majority of my time is still MacPaw, but right now the focus shifted considering the war and that all of that is happening in Ukraine. Right now, like it's very hard to be focused solely on work. Like we think about how we can be useful as citizens of Ukraine, how we can help to win this war.
Absolutely, and I think so do so many other people in the tech community right now, which is of course a very unfortunate development, but a great thing to see how a country, a people, and an ecosystem can come together to help and support the country. So I've got a bunch of questions for these as well, and I mean we can start right now. Really, where were you on the 24th of February?
So I was in Kiev at my home, and just a few weeks ago, and before that, I returned from like a family trip to Thailand, where I left my family and went back to Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Did you expect that something like this could happen?
Well, we were aware that the probability of Russian invasion was very high, and because of these early warnings by the Western leaders like Joe Biden. And we thought, like personally, me, I was like 80% sure that Russia will invade to Ukraine.
So did you have any contingency plans for yourself, for the company?
You know, we started to prepare early, probably back in December. We started to think together with the team how we can react to these possible risks and how we can support our team to help them stay safe or evacuate whatever the region will be affected.
Did it all work?
Well, yes, many of the plans that we prepared actually helped us a lot because when all of this started, it was like a total chaos and it was almost impossible to find, for example, a hotel in the Western Ukraine or to find a small office for the team in the Western Ukraine. But we did all of that. Like we had an agreements with hotel and co-working place even before the war. So we just activated these plans and it was much easier for our team.
Right. So MacPaw and your products, I think you have always sort of wore the Ukrainian flag with pride. It was always stated in the products that they are made in Ukraine. So what did your customers see in the first days of the war, if anything at all? What did change in your products with your products?
Yeah, it was not always. It started in 2014 after the revolution of the Euromaidan revolution. So we started to believe in Ukraine and the Ukrainian nation and people, and we started to state proudly that our products, our companies from Ukraine. But when the war started, like the first initiative that we tried to do is we used our products as a probably even a propaganda machine to let Russian users know that what Russians actually do in Ukraine. And we naively thought that this will change something, that they will strike and they will go to the streets and try to persuade their government to stop. But unfortunately, we were very wrong.
Yeah, I can very well relate, in fact, because in these first weeks I was also involved in a very similar project with a friend of mine when we created basically a script that could do exactly the same what you did on your website, but for any website, and we did add it to a few websites that we could contact. But yeah, we very quickly sort of got disillusioned about this approach, and I suppose you as well. So what did you? What was the next thing you did then?
Yeah, so the next thing that we did is we decided to leave Russia completely. So we blocked access to our products for Russian population, for Russian customers. We canceled all our subscriptions, and we started to focus on other useful products that we could quickly develop in the very first day of war. So we started from internal products, and that we then made public, like for example, Together app. This was like a chatbot where we could quickly report status. Are we safe? Can we support with some charity initiatives? Can we work, etc., etc. So it was like a very easy to use chatbot where we could collect information about all our employees and to immediately know if they need any help or where they are, etc., etc. So we made this Together app public and open source on the GitHub, and we started to do some other initiatives like SpyBuster. This was one of the other apps that we created during the first days of war.
Right.
SpyBuster, it's like an app that helps users identify products that are somehow connected to Russia or Belarus. Maybe they are sending some data, or maybe they have servers in these countries. We mark these applications or websites and tell users that be careful with your data if you trust these apps.
So does SpyBuster operates through a certain database that you are maintaining?
Yeah, we use a number of techniques, like one of them, for example, like geo-based IP detection. So we know the list of IPs that are identified as Russian IPs, and if any application has sent in some requests to these IP addresses, we mark them as potentially unwanted or dangerous.
Right. Right. So these are the new products, and in your old products, do you still run any informational campaigns in CleanMyMac, in Gemini, and the others?
Yeah, at the very beginning, we used to do so for the Russian users, but right now, no. But we still clearly state that MacPaw products are Ukrainian products, and we are asking people to help Ukrainian organizations that are working with refugees or with military in order to help us win this war.
Did you hear from your customers in the first weeks of the war, and now did you get any letters, any emails, any contact from your customers, any support?
Yeah, we feel extreme support. We received tons of letters from customers from all over the world that they are with us. They asked what we can do to help, and they support Ukraine in this unprovoked war.
And what's your geography in general? Where do the most of your customers reside? Is it the US?
Yeah, like 40% of our customers are from US and 40% is Europe. So Russian and Belarusian customers were around 1.8% of total customers.
Right. And Ukrainian customers, do you have many local ones?
We do, but far less than even Russian customers, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's again, it's about the penetration of macOS and iOS devices. I suppose we don't have that many in Ukraine.
Yeah, definitely. Like the Mac devices are not as popular as Windows in Ukraine, unfortunately.
And they were not quite even close to be as popular in 2008. So how did it actually happen that you got sort of sucked into this hole?
Well, I accidentally became a big Apple fan, and then an Apple evangelist. So I started to sell Apple to all the friends, all people around me, and this is how it even helped me to start the company.
I mean, this hardware is still not the most affordable, but back then, I suppose, especially in Ukraine, it should cost a fortune, didn't it?
It did, but it was like a high risk, high reward stake for me.
Was it also hard to find developers for this ecosystem back in the day?
Yes, developers were extremely hard to find, but there was a company called Mac Kiev that are still operating in Kiev.
Software Mac Kiev, was it?
Yes, Software Mac Kiev. So they had a lot of Mac engineers back then, and they were developing like different hardware drivers, system software, software for kids for macOS, and this is where we actually started to receive our first engineers from.
So they fled from that company and joined yours.
Some of them did, yeah.
I see.
They had a really good school.
And how did it go in the first years with marketing? Like how would someone based in Ukraine market software mostly in the Western countries and particularly in the United States?
It was like trial and error or trial and success thing. I was monitoring different other vendors that I inspired from. I've seen how they distribute software, how they promote their software, what tools do they use, etc., etc. And from the very first days, like the biggest thing that impacted the early business was different download sites that was distributing information about the new software and updates, and it was pretty popular websites. So I used these websites to frequently update our software and to be always on top of the lists. This was like the very beginning, and then I started to use Google AdWords, which worked really well for our product, and we started to gain more and more experience. We started to integrate some analytics in order to do things even better, and it became one of the biggest channels still for our company.
And since you mentioned download websites, I do remember that back in that time, I mean, it's still the case, but back in that time in particular, a lot of those download websites were actually just like pirate websites. Did you see a lot of that going on? Did you see your software being hacked, cracked, and just put on BitTorrent websites as free software?
Well, actually, they were not all pirate websites, because like the first thing I asked when I got a Mac, because I knew nothing about this ecosystem, is where to get apps, and I started to receive some recommendations from other users. Like you can go to download.com, you can go to Mac Update or Mac Tracker, etc., etc. And this was like a really useful sources of information. But yeah, indeed. The hackers were popular as well, and our software was not an exception. We were hacked, we were placed on different torrent websites, but I decided that it is better to be friends with the hackers than try to fight them. And I started to give our license for the products for free to hackers and communities, and this really helped us to build a very responsive community of early beta testers in the very beginning. So we had emails of each users that tried to crack our software, and we distributed early versions. We received immediate response, and they became our friends.
Are you still in touch with some of these people?
Some of them work in our company.
That's definitely an interesting way to work with software and to get a job in a software company. That's for sure. I mean, what I, by the way, think. So I'm just like for the background, most of my life I've been running Windows or Linux machines. I've been using an Apple laptop for maybe a year now. What I see in the like software ecosystem, like a utility software ecosystem in particular, you know, there's like small things that do something very particular that you happen to need, and maybe, I don't know, 1,000 of other people need in the whole world. So what you usually in the Linux ecosystem, for example, and often in the Windows ecosystem, you get this stuff as freeware. You get this stuff as like open and free. On the Mac ecosystem for macOS, I often see that you get pretty much the same things, but with better UI and for, I don't know, $10. Is this like how does it make sense? Like do you see that this is the way that this ecosystem functions?
Well, if you want pain and suffering, you can go to Windows and Linux.
I've been there. I had that. Thank you.
Yeah, but in reality, the Mac ecosystem is a bit different. People pay a lot of attention to details, to the customer experience, to the UX of the products. And yeah, if you pay that much attention to the details, it must cost something, because this is a work of many designers and developers that should be rewarded. And beside that, like it's really important to pay for software, because if you want to receive a stable, frequently updated, nicely built product, people have to support it and they have to monetize it. Otherwise, you will receive like one-time use products that you may not even enjoy while using, or they will break in a while.
And speaking of all these designers and developers, how big is MacPaw now? How many people do you have?
It's more than 400 people now.
Where are they mostly located, or were before the war started?
Yeah, before the war, mostly in Kiev, Ukraine. We had some remote employees in other locations as well, but 98% of our team was in Kiev. Mm-hmm. Right now, people had to leave Ukraine, so around 250 people are still in Ukraine, but not only in Kiev, but distributed in Western Ukraine as well. And many had to take their families and leave Ukraine.
Right. So for everyone who has just joined us, this is a Blockquote show in which we talk with Ukrainian tech ecosystem founders. We discuss everything that is going in the country right now and how the tech ecosystem and product companies react to what is going on. This is a stream in which we are raising funds for the Comeback Alive Foundation that works with the Ukrainian military to support everyone fighting for Ukraine's freedom and independence right now. If you are able to, please do consider donating to this cause. You can use the QR code in the bottom left corner of your screen. Just scan the code and you will be sent to the donation page of the Comeback Alive Foundation. These codes will never expire. Even if you are watching this stream later on anywhere, you can still scan the code and you can still donate. Thank you so much for doing so. So Oleksandr, I also read recently about your very recent investment, in fact, already wartime investment into this space in the west of Ukraine in Ivano-Frankivsk called Promprylad. Can you talk about it a bit more? So what is it, and why did MacPaw, well, why did SMRK and its co-founder decided to get involved in a space, basically physical space business?
Yeah, this is one of our wartime investments. We actually made a bit more and even exits. So regarding the Promprylad, when I first met the founder of Promprylad, like I was really inspired by the things that they are doing. So it's not just a place to work. They are trying to create an ecosystem that will magnet the talented people from the Western Ukraine and allow people to stay in Ukraine versus living to some other countries. It creates like a very strong bond between different directions like city, art, technology, like creativity, etc. So there are many people that are located in the same area. They interact with each other, and in the result, they are producing like a really interesting output, like companies that think widely, companies that are really useful for the society and for the local region. And so initially we decided to support this project, but probably like 4 years ago. And right now, many businesses, many people had to relocate to Ivano-Frankivsk region, and this project is even more important right now than ever before.
Right, and a part of your team is working from there as well, right?
Yeah, so this is one of the agreements that we had before the war. So if something happens, we need to have a small location that we will be able to work from if we have to.
But is it actually a VC case for you at all?
I would say it's more like a social responsibility. I don't expect it to produce any meaningful business results, but it is still an investment. In the best case scenario, we will receive like small portion of revenue in the future, but I don't treat it as like a business project.
But even with this amount that you have invested, which is I think $1.5 million for by now, the project itself is huge, and I read I think it's about 30-something thousand square meters. So this money would not, I think, be enough to build everything that they want to build. Are they looking for more, and are you going to invest more later on?
Yes, they're definitely looking and are able to raise more, and they have like even large international donors like EBRD, for example, and they use crowdfunding as well in order to support this project. So far, if I'm not wrong, they probably raised around 15 million.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, of course. And speaking of your VC activity, so you mentioned more investments, you mentioned exits. Can you talk more about that? What's going on there?
Yes, so just recently, I'm not sure if it is already public information, maybe not, but it's still. So we decided to invest in to raise our stake in one of our previous startups. It is called Esper Bionics, and this is a company that's doing bionic limbs for people that lost their limbs during different occasions. So right now, especially, this is very useful project because unfortunately we will have a lot of people who lost their limbs due to the war, including military. guys and girls. We hope it will help people at least to increase their life comfort and not return it to normal, but still it will be more. It will be better than before.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a Ukrainian company?
Yeah, this is a completely Ukrainian company. They were based in Kiev as well, but they had to relocate to outside of Ukraine.
Right. And the exit?
We decided to exit from one of our Russian startups. So this is the company that we founded back in 2013, even before the revolution. It was called Amazing Hiring, and we decided that right now, definitely, no matter what, we don't have to be involved anyhow with Russian activities. And we made an exit from this company.
Absolutely. And so how is your portfolio right now doing? What do you see happening with, let's say, smaller companies, smaller than MacPaw, in Ukraine right now because of the war?
Well, unfortunately, many of the companies were really affected, and they had to pivot some of their activities. They had to relocate their production and businesses. And unfortunately, not all of them will survive because the business has dramatically changed. But we, as a VC fund, we were trying to invest into the company that mostly focusing on the Western markets, and this really helped us a lot because most of our portfolio companies are still operational and were adapted to the situation.
Mm-hmm. I see. And so about MacPaw itself as a company, are you involved or have you started any support initiatives yourselves?
Yes, so we did from the very first days. Like we thought how we could help, and we started to be involved in many initiatives. Like for example, to buy a tactical medicine for our warriors. We try to help to buy different drones and whatever is needed at the front, and we also thought about how we can help the refugees.
Mm-hmm.
So since the very beginning of the war, we donated over $5 million of our own funds, and we even opened our own development foundation that we use in order to collect external funds as well. So our two primarily focuses are tactical medicine and protective equipment for the armed forces.
Right. And so are there any metrics that you can share about this foundation that you started?
Well, so far we have raised over $650,000 for by the donors for the foundation, which is really helpful, and we are extremely grateful to people who are donating to our or any other foundation that is currently working with Ukrainian refugees and military, because I believe that it wouldn't be possible to win this war without the activists, without this active community that is helping. And this is really a miracle what our heroes are doing right now.
And are you mostly raising these funds from outside of Ukraine or from inside of Ukraine?
Mostly from outside, so from, for example, our users or any partners that we have, because unfortunately Ukrainian people do invest a lot. We've seen a recent campaign for the Bayraktars that like Ukrainians were able to collect more than $15 million in less than a week. But still our resources are getting drained. and unfortunately, it is very important to help us from outside.
Yes, no, absolutely. I absolutely agree with this point. And every time I see how much Ukrainians can chip in a very short term, every time I get absolutely amazed at these developments. So, but I guess you're still you still have to work one way or the other. You have your customers, you have your products. So, what is the work at MacPaw looking right now? Like, what are the differences that are the most striking if you would compare the normal work before the invasion and the work now?
Yeah, so when the war started, like we activated our emergency scenarios, and mostly like the business went off. I mean, autonomous. So all our products were operational, website was operational, but people were not involved into the everyday company activity, but still everything worked. So after the first month's war, we understood that the situation is controllable. We have some successes on the front. Russians started to flee the Kiev region. So we started to return to the normal work, and I think this is extremely important to support the economics of Ukraine, because without the economy, unfortunately, our country will not be able to support the army, and we will lose. So as a businesses, as entrepreneurs, we understand that it's extremely important to continue to work and to continue to pay taxes, to pay salaries in order to win this war.
Right. Yeah. So and so what is it like right now? What's the work like?
So we reviewed all our goals for this year. Definitely, many of them are not reachable anymore, and we reduced some of the expectations for the new projects. But still, we decided to keep most of the goals, but delayed in time in order to continue to grow at the company and be able to be a successful business in Ukraine. The biggest issue that we have right now is it's mentally we are very involved into the war, into everything that is happening, and every time you receive this news, like for example a few days ago, all of these terrorist strikes on the trading centers, this is very horrible and very hard to live with, and we are involved into the situation, and we're not able to work at full capacity. And I would say so it's probably 50-60% capacity that it was before the war.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine. Now, Oleksandr, thank you so much once again for taking the time. Thanks a lot for joining today. I wish you the best of luck with your work, with your volunteering, with everything that you're doing, and I hope to talk to you once again in person after the victory.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation, and thanks everyone who is making donations to Come Back Alive Foundation and any other foundation in Ukraine. You are heroes for us.
Thank you so much, everyone who has watched this episode of Blockquote. Once again, you can always use the QR code in the bottom left of your screen to donate. These codes will never expire. You can do it at any time that you are watching this video. Thanks a lot again for watching, and I am going to talk to you very soon together with another Ukrainian founder. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.